Have you ever felt like you're not good enough? Like you're constantly chasing perfection or comparing yourself to others? In today's episode, you're going to learn how to stop doing that and start building real, lasting confidence from the inside out. You're going to walk away with practical mindset shifts, empowering stories, and tangible tips to become more self-assured in your everyday life. Before we dive in, if you're listening on the Apple Podcast app or on Spotify, make sure you hit the follow button. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit like and subscribe down below. You're listening to the Best You podcast, where we teach you the healthy habits that you need to look and feel like your best you. My name is Nick Carrier, and I'm a body optimization coach and creator of the 10-Week Transformation. The 10WT exists to help busy go-getters stay focused on their health and fitness, no matter what season of life that they're in, so that they can remain confident, energized, and impactful in all areas of their life. The 10WT has transformed the bodies and the lives of over 900 people so far. And if you want to learn more about the program, then go to nickcarrier.com/10WT. We have a really great episode today for you guys with Sheena Yap Chan, who's a Wall Street Journal best-selling author. And I'm really excited for you to learn about how she was born in the Philippines. At 7 years old, she moved to Toronto, Canada, and she felt like she needed to dye her hair blonde and have blonde hair, blue eyes in order to be someone. But then she realized she didn't need to. Later in her life, she moved to Hawaii, not really knowing why, not knowing what she was going to do, and the confidence was just building from there. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear her episode and get a lot of great takeaways from it. So for now, it's time to get closer and closer to your best you with the one and only Sheena Yap. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Best You podcast today. I am very excited to help you guys build your confidence today, both men, but especially women, with the one and only Sheena Yap Chan. The way I want to get started today is by getting a little bit into kind of your career and kind of the trajectory of your career and how it's turned into one where confidence and self-confidence has been the thing that you really want to focus on. You know, if you're watching on video right now, she's written 2 books, The Tao of Self-Confidence, and then her upcoming book that will release on May 6th called Bridging the Confidence Gap. And then she's been hosting a podcast since 2015 called The Tao of Self-Confidence, or The Way to Self-Confidence. And so really excited to dive into that with you. So talk to me about, I know you started the podcast back in 2015. What were you doing before that? And how did you get to the point where you wanted to like start your own show and become kind of somebody who speaks on the topic of confidence?
First off, Nick, thank you so much for having me on the show today. It's really an honor to be a guest. And so, a little bit about my story. I was born in the Philippines, moved to Toronto when I was 7, and everything really stemmed from my upbringing. You know, even though Toronto is one of the most multicultural cities in the world, when it came to media, it was bare. You know, there wasn't anybody in the media that looked like me, and I was always ashamed of who I was, my culture. I wanted to look differently, have blonde hair and blue eyes to feel more accepted into Western culture. And, you know, it wasn't until my 20s where I dyed my hair back from blonde to my original hair color, where I embraced being Asian, embraced my culture. And, you know, I worked an office job for 12 years. You know, I always knew I was meant to do something more. But of course, I was always afraid because I was always taught, you know, go to school, get a job, and then work there till you retire. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You know, a lot of people love their jobs, and that's totally okay. But I knew deep inside I was just meant for more. You know, I would just sit in my cubicle and think to myself, like, is this life? Like, is this it? I just come in Monday to Friday, work 8 hours a day or more, and then that's it. And it wasn't until when my aunt passed away from a horrific accident 12 years ago where I realized that if I don't go out there and do something, I'm gonna live life with regrets, right? Sometimes we
Mm.
feel like we're a zombie going into work day in and day out, and we don't even realize like time passes by so quickly. I mean, I remember driving to work sometimes, and like as soon as I got into the office, I'd be like, how did I get here? Like I knew how I got there, but you're just like, how did I get here? Like, you know, you're just like unconsciously like going through the flow. And so that was the catalyst that kind of started me thinking, well, maybe I could do something different, right?
Mm.
You know, I miss my
Yeah.
aunt. She was able to like do all these things in her 50s that most people would love to do in their 20s, right? And so
Mm. That's awesome. Well, I want to probably talk about that catalyst moment when maybe your aunt passed away. Did kind of like what was different moving forward. But before we get into that, I'm just curious. You know, when you said you moved to Toronto when you were 7, and you said that you were ashamed of your culture, and so you wanted to have blonde hair, blue eyes. Like, what led to the feeling of like shame of being Asian in Toronto?
I think it's because all I ever saw in the media was just blonde hair and blue eyes, and it felt like that was the standard. You look at billboards, you look at magazines, it was like the same thing over and over again. And I felt like, I guess that was the standard of beauty. And
So that was the thing that you saw as like glorified, and so you think like, I guess I need to be that.
yeah, yeah, I guess like in order to be beautiful, I guess I needed to have blonde hair and blue eyes. And of course, I don't, right? Like I have black hair, dark brown hair, got dark brown eyes, and like totally not the standard that I thought I had to live up to.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. When your aunt passed away 12 years ago, you said that was a catalyst moment. Let's see, that's 2013 if I'm doing my math correctly. I know you started the podcast in 2015 at least. When that happened, what was like, okay, I need to do something different? What was like one of the first things you did in order to like spark a new difference in your life?
So it didn't happen overnight, of course. I didn't like just jump up and just change everything in an instant, but it started like thinking of different ways, what can I do? And like it was funny because one of the things I started telling myself is like I just wanted to live somewhere different, right? And I didn't know where different was. I just knew I needed, especially being in Toronto and being like in the winter, it's really bad sometimes. Like we get cold warnings, we deal in Celsius, so sometimes we would get a cold warning of like minus 40 degrees Celsius. And it was just like, why am I in this country? I love Canada, don't get me wrong, but the winters are brutal. And one day I just saw like Hawaii, right? And it just like called to me and I had no clue why. And sometimes you just see things and it calls to you and you have no reason why it did. And then about a couple years later, I kind of like, um, my mortgage was up for my condo, and instead of renewing it, I just said I'll sell my condo, sell all my things, quit my job, and just go, right? And I wouldn't advise this for every single person, like I would say have a backup plan if you did, but for me, I guess it just felt right. And I had no idea what I was going to do, but I went to Hawaii and I didn't even know why I went there. And even in that moment in time, I had no clue why I went there. And then it just like maybe 5 years ago, I realized I just needed to heal. I just needed to go through the motions by myself. And there's something really powerful about Hawaii. Yes, it's beautiful, nice beaches, island lifestyle, but there is something magical in the island that just kind of like draws into you, kind of calls to you sometimes. And I know that may sound weird, but like I've spoken to a lot of people and they're like, I totally get it, right? Like sometimes there's just things that call to you, and you just have to go, right? And so
Yeah.
that was that moment. And then I've always wanted to have a platform where I wanted to empower women, right? And I didn't know what that platform looked like. And in 2015, I was dealing with my own confidence issues, right? I was going through the motions, I was unlearning a lot of things. And especially growing up in an Asian household, you're taught to just live one way, right? You're taught to go to school, get a job, get married, never rock the boat, stay in the background, don't do anything. You got to show up as a perfect daughter, wife, sister, and that gets really exhausting, right? And so all these like confidence issues started coming. And so in 2015, when I was looking for resources that also catered to Asian women, there wasn't any. And so part of me thought maybe something was wrong with me because I was feeling this way. But I also had to remind myself, like, we don't talk about these things, right? We just keep it in the closet. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to start it, right? Like representation was still very important till this day. And instead of me complaining about it, I said, if I really crave for it, then I have to start it, even if I had no clue what I was doing. And so a friend told me about podcasts, and I'm like, I don't even know what a podcast is, right? Like I see it
Yeah.
on iTunes because they didn't have Apple Podcasts back then. It was all on iTunes. And I was really curious about it. I actually invested in a course to learn more about it, be in this like mastermind. And I'm kind of glad that I did because you'll probably find this funny, but my first title for my podcast wasn't the Tao of Self-Confidence. I was trying to be clever and say that I was going to call it The Stripper, and the tagline was to strip your limiting beliefs away. And I paid somebody to create a graphic with that and like a silhouette of a stripper with a whip. And I shared it in that mastermind, and 9 out of 10 was like, I think you'll get the wrong idea. So I was like, oh my goodness, if I can't get the name right, how am I going to get the show right? And that's when I had to like take a step back, get really clear, and then the actual title came out. And I said that felt really good. I shared it again, and everybody loved it. 9 out of 10 loved it. I was like, okay, I'm in the right place. Um,
That's awesome. Well, to go off of that, I think that's a good segue because oftentimes we think we have to nail the first iteration of whatever it is perfect before we do anything. And I know this is something that you talk a lot about, a lot, especially with women. And this is something that all of us deal with, men or women, is we feel like we need to be perfect before we get something started. We feel like we need to know exactly what we're getting ourselves into before we start a business, start a new job, move to a new location. It's like you moved to Hawaii having no idea what the heck you were going to do, maybe where you were going to live, so on and so forth. You started a podcast not really knowing a podcast, calling it The Stripper. So talk to us about how we can overcome the idea and the thought process and the hurdle of feeling like we need to be perfect before we even take step one.
Well, first off, perfection is an illusion, right? That's what I tell everybody. It's not real, right? It's make believe because there's no one out there who's perfect. And for me, it's important to show up as imperfect, right? Like even if I'm a writer, I still get grammatical errors. And my sister would make fun of me because she's like, "You're a writer, like what's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Leave me alone," right? Like that's what publishers are for. They got people to check my grammar. And I think for me, it's just leading by example is really important, right? Like if you listen to my first episode of the podcast, it was probably a hot mess compared to like episode 900 and something. So we all have to start somewhere. It's gonna suck. I think it's also important to remind people like it's not gonna be rainbows and butterflies. It's gonna suck. It's gonna be uncomfortable, but you have to go out there and take that first step because the first step is the most important. And I think having someone by your side is really important because I had a mentor, he's the one who actually pushed me to do it because I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I've delayed it for 4 months. I don't know if this is going to be good. And then I was comparing myself to other podcasters who've been there for like 5, 6 years. So of course they're going to do a lot better than I am. And he was the one who mentioned, just do it, right? Like if it sucks, it sucks. If not, then you never know where it could take you, right? But at least you went for it instead of wondering what if.
Yeah.
So yeah, so having someone by your side is also very important.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And like you said, hearing other people's stories about how they started off their podcast calling it The Stripper and knowing people weren't perfect when they started on their journey is really empowering as well. But to kind of segue into maybe another topic that you might cover with women in particular, with both, but again with women in particular, is comparison. You know, you said I found myself comparing myself to other podcasters. Like, am I going to be as good as them? It's like obviously no when you first start off, and I think we all have such a heightened level of comparison nowadays. I don't think I know because of how much insight we get into other people's lives with social media, YouTube, so on and so forth. And so I think comparison is inevitable. And I think that oftentimes we need to try to use comparison to motivate and inspire rather than to diminish ourselves. So, how do you really talk to women in particular about the topic of comparison, whether it's like with your career or your personal lives, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think, I mean, being in Asian culture, the comparison game is always like on, right? Like whose kid who graduated with straight A's, who had the better wedding, who went to the best colleges. And sometimes it's easier, like this is easier said than done, of course. This is why it takes a lot of work. We just have to block out the noise sometimes. And yes, I love that you mentioned instead of using that comparison for something negative, use it for something positive, right? I was the same way, like when I would invite women to be on my podcast, like some of these women are like phenomenal, 8, 9 figure businesses, 2 million followers on like their social media. And I'm like thinking, why are they on my show? Like, I don't understand this, right? And I realized, instead of comparing myself and thinking that I'm no good, I should be celebrating it. I'm like, yes, thank you that there's a woman out there who does have a 9 figure business. Thank you to the woman who did build up a 2 million follower Instagram following account, right? Like celebrating those women was more important than comparing myself. And don't get me wrong, I still it still gets to me, but I realize that instead of doing that, I have to reframe it and say, good for them. Thank you, someone is paving the way. Thank you that there's someone out there breaking that barrier because it's so important, especially now. It's 2025 and there's still a lot of women who don't get that fair treatment, right? You look at like a country like Afghanistan where women's rights basic human rights are literally stripped away, right? They're not allowed to be seen in public, can't even sing in their own homes, can't even talk to other people. And so this is why the work is so important.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I think reframing is the perfect word when it comes to comparison because it will grip all of us and take us all down if we don't acknowledge it and then find a way to let it inspire us, figure out what we can learn from somebody who might be elevated in a certain area of life compared to us, but then also realizing that that's just one area of life. That's not the whole story. Everybody's story is a little bit different, so on and so forth is as really important things to acknowledge as well. I'm interested, everybody uses the word confidence and the phrase self-confidence all the time. How do you define confidence or self-confidence?
Yeah, for me, just after like 10 years of talking and working on confidence, for me, confidence is knowing you're capable, knowing that you can do it. Even if you don't know what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, you just know you're capable. And I think for women, it's important because how we see ourselves stops us from that capability, right? We think we're not good enough, we're thinking small, we think that there's someone better out there, and so we resist and not take confidence, and that's why there's a huge gap between men and women when it comes to the confidence gap, right? Because you know, men, even if they don't know what they're doing, they're going to go out there and do it, right? Even if they're like 30% ready, they're going to go ahead and do it and figure it out and just wing it. As women, we over prepare and we still hold back, right? And not saying all women do that. Most women I've spoken to have gone through that. I've gone through that. And so this is why for me it's so important to remind people, especially women, about their capability. And even if women, there are so many amazing women that are capable, right? And yet their capabilities still get questioned by so many people. I recently watched Running Point on Netflix, and if you haven't watched it, I'm just going to have one little scene that I'm going to share. And so it stars Kate Hudson, and it's about her being promoted to president of her family's basketball team, right? She's going to start running the basketball team. And her brothers asked her, are you capable of doing this? And it's like, why wouldn't she be capable, right? I mean, she knows every single detail about basketball. When she was growing up in the story, like she talks about how she's so passionate about basketball. She followed her dad around everywhere. Yet, she still gets questioned, are you capable? And that question can either fuel us or it could do the opposite, right? It could bring us down to a level thinking, well, am I? Then you start questioning yourself, am I capable? Like, is this something that I can do? And the answer is yes, it is something that you can do. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, it's going to be easy. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, but you can do it, right? You'll figure it out because, I mean, that's what men do. They figure things out all the time, right? They make mistakes, they correct it, they move on. The only difference is that as women, unfortunately, we get criticized for every single mistake we do. And that's something that we have to keep pushing forward so that we can also be seen as just, leaders who are doing our best to make a positive impact.
What do you think leads us in that moment when somebody's going to ask us, are you capable? Because we're all, whether it's exactly those words or not, we're all going to be asked that by somebody at some point in time, whether it's our career or a different area of life, men or women. We're going to ask, are you capable? What's the difference between somebody who says, yes, I am, and versus somebody who says, no, I'm not? Because like you said, I know that me personally, oftentimes, if I'm asked, am I capable of doing this? I'm like, I sometimes, maybe even will say this out loud, but know this internally as well. Currently, I'm not, but I know I will figure it out. And so if somebody responds like that or like, yes, I'm capable, what's the difference? Like, what has had to happen in that person's life leading up to that point compared to somebody who doesn't feel that way?
I think it's the experiences they've gone through, right? They've been able to, start a business from scratch or, have an idea like come to life, even if they had no clue where it could happen, or even the personal development they've worked on, right? Reading books, listening to podcasts like this, or watching, interviews of YouTube video of successful people and their journey, right? Because their journey wasn't like it wasn't like linear, right? Their journey was like up and down. It was like a roller coaster. And so seeing that helps them realize like I don't have to figure everything out. I can figure this out as I go. And I'm not saying to go out there blind. Of course, do your research, right? If you can. But like if there's something that feels right, and you don't even really know how that's going to happen yet, just say yes, right? Like just say yes and you'll figure it out as you go. Sometimes, there's so many opportunities that come our way and we say no to these opportunities because we feel like, well, I don't know what to do with it, right? Even in speaking engagements, when people are like, oh, we'd love you to speak on like UX design. I'm like, okay. And I have no clue what UX design was at the time. I do now because I had to do research, but I figure I'll say yes and deal with it later, right? I'll figure it out. I can do it. And that's what it means by being capable. You might not know that subject matter yet, but you will figure it out. You'll do your research, you'll get it done so that on that day you can speak with confidence.
Yeah, no doubt. I've always thought about confidence through the fact of, or building confidence through the lens of being the type of person who follows through with the promises that you make to yourself, like telling yourself you're gonna do something and you do it. Basically, seeing yourself as the type of person who takes action. Because then when somebody asks you, "Are you capable?" and you're like, "Well, I haven't actually done this in particular yet before. I know that in the past, my experience shows me that I'm somebody who gets things done and takes action. I know that I'm going to do the same thing moving forward." So I always feel like if you show yourself that you're the type of person who will do stuff and take action, then you have the feeling that no matter what comes your way, you're going to be able to find a way to get it done.
Yeah.
Um, what has allowed you, what are one of the times that you feel most confident in yourself?
That's a great question. Um, I think the most I think for me, it's just showing up, right?
Mhm.
One of the things that, especially as women, we've been told not to do is self-promotion, right?
Yeah.
Self-promotion is seen as tacky, as not ladylike, and I don't even know who said that, but for me, self-promotion is empowering, right? It helps us build leadership skills, confidence. And, a lot of people are so worried, like, well, people are going to think you're too arrogant. And it's like, it has nothing to do with arrogance, right? For me, the reason why I put myself out there is because there's someone else who's looking, who needs an answer, who needs to see that here's a woman just doing it, right? Just going out there, showing up, speaking her truth. And if she can do it, so can I. Like the actions I take, it helps other people see what's possible. And also, if you have a product and service that can impact the world for the better, why wouldn't you share it, right? Why wouldn't you put it out into the world? This is your work. You should be proud of it. But yet, we've been told don't share your achievements, don't be too bragful. Um, Meanwhile, like I see men do this all the time, and they get praised for it. So for me, it's breaking that, dismantling that notion that self-promotion is tacky, it's forceful. It is empowering, right? Like I look at the
Yeah.
movie Barbie, right? I mean, their marketing was like crazy, right? It was like promotions everywhere, collaborations with every single company. Like there was even a Barbie Xbox, which is wild. And because they were able to do that promotion, that excessive promotion before the movie came out, it led to the first movie that hit $1 billion solely directed by a woman. So that is powerful, right? Because for so long, Hollywood thinks women aren't bankable, yet we have a movie here about a doll that made $1 billion, right? So that's for me is important, and that's for me like even if I'm still scared, I will show up because it helps others see what's possible. And then when I get positive feedback, I know that I'm going in the right direction.
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's something I wanted to extend off of that. Let me see if I can get back to it. Yeah. Oh, I think how you view self promotion is everything, because especially you know as society as a whole, if we were kind of raised right, we were taught to be humble, but humble is a word that can mean a lot of different things and manifests itself in so many ways. And like I think women in particular are taught to be humble and be self-sacrificing and all that stuff, and that's true and that's good, but again, that can be taken different ways. Oftentimes people see self-promotion as maybe selfish and you're just trying to put yourself in the spotlight. But what about flipping and reframing it to I'm promoting myself so that I can serve more people, so that I can actually sacrifice more of myself for other people? Because then self promotion is almost the ultimate sign of self sacrifice, because you're doing it because you just want to be of service of other people. So I think how you view self promotion is really important too.
Yeah, I love that. And everything I do, I try to pre-frame it, right? Yes, there's things that happen to us, and I always ask myself, what's the lesson? What's the blessing? Right? Because
Mhm.
if I keep on just saying, I can't believe this is happening to me, what's wrong with me? Why are these things happening to me? I've had to learn to like pre-frame it and be like, okay, what are you teaching me? Like, what's the lesson? What's the blessing? What's going to come out of this? And so the more I think of it that way, I don't have to like put myself in a pity party, right? I just keep moving, and I know that lesson will appear even if it might take a while.
No, I love those two questions. What's the lesson? What's the blessing? Those are super easy to keep top of mind, and a lot of people can get a lot of use out of that. Another thing that I want to touch on, which again, both men and women suffer from a little bit, but probably women more than men, is basically, and you talk about this a lot, being okay to ask questions. And I kind of like see that through the lens of being okay with negotiating on behalf of yourself, because so many women are just very agreeable people and AKA like people pleasers. And so oftentimes they don't like conflict, they don't like confrontation, they don't like arguments. And so what are some ways that you teach women and that you've done yourself and you've experienced yourself on how to negotiate on behalf of yourself and be strong enough and confident in yourself to maybe enter a little bit of conflict or enter into a little bit of a confrontation?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to negotiations, especially with pay raise, right? I think that's something we're afraid to do, right? Because we think, well, we should be grateful that we have this job. Yes, it's grateful that you have a job, but you should also be paid by your worth, right? I mean, there's a pay gap still between men and women, and you might not always get that pay raise, but at least you've been able to prepare the work and show the person why you deserve that, right? Maybe you were able to bring in the numbers up, productivity went up, you have proof, you have testimonials from other coworkers. I think having a solid reason is important to that. Like one thing that I did in my job, I remember getting a work review by my boss, and so he's like, okay, I'm gonna raise your your pay from 50 to $54,000. And this is a true story. I told him, "Is it okay if you add one more thousand? Because in Chinese culture, anything that ends in a four is actually a bad omen." And it's true. Anything we don't like the number four because if you say it out in Chinese, it means death. So if you go to a Chinese person's house, no one has a four in their number, or it's rare. It's very rare. If you go to a Chinese builder, nothing ends in four. So like even so if you go from like 10 to 19, like 13 and 14 would be taken out, right? Because 13 is like bad luck for like, you know, Friday the 13th. So it is like a tradition that we follow. And so my boss actually laughed at it because of course he thinks it sounds ridiculous, but I was serious about it, right? But he gave it to me, right? Like he gave it to me because I had this, for me, it was a very valid reason. This is something that we are very serious about. And so it's not a lot, it's $1,000, but it was $1,000 more than just by simply asking and providing a solid reason.
Yeah, no, that's solid. That's solid. The solid reason four is bad juju. I love it. That's great. That's solid enough reason. I'm curious. Obviously, you have probably come such a long way yourself with regards to building self confidence up to this point in your life and up to this point in your career. What is still holding you back from getting to that next level of self confidence that you want to get through, get to, so that you can create another breakthrough in your life?
I love this question because a lot of people think when you talk about confidence, people think that you're always confident. There's days where I'm totally not confident, right? There's still things that I fear. There's still things that hold me back. And I know the biggest person that holds me back is myself, right? There's still like these thoughts like, what if they say no? What if I get ghosted? What if they reject me? And so I have to work on that, right? Learning that rejection is part of the process. It's okay if you get ghosted. We just keep moving forward. And so there's still parts of me that still play very small. And, I have to go out there and play bigger and connect with the right people to help me get through that. So, when it comes to your confidence journey, you don't have to do this alone, right? You have people that will help you get you there. And it's a lot better when you're doing it with a group of people, right? It will increase your confidence a lot faster because there's someone out there helping you out, checking out your blind spots. And so for me, it's really important to show others that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to receive help. That's another thing I have to work on because in our culture, asking for help is considered a weakness or a handout. And I want to change that notion and tell people it's totally okay. there's no shame in asking for help, especially in this day and age where like we have social media, and social media can play a huge mind trick on us, right? Seeing these perfectly curated photos, not knowing what's going on behind closed doors. So,
That's great. I'm curious as to has there been a biggest event in your life or maybe habits in your life that you feel like has built the most confidence in yourself? You know, for example, like I feel like moving to Hawaii, having no idea what the hell you're going to do when you move out there, like that's got to be a pretty darn big confidence builder. I know for me, like getting up and reading every morning for 45 minutes is like just a habit that has built a lot of confidence for me over the years. So is there any like event or habit or like combination of the two that you feel like has really been a huge boost of confidence for you over the years?
yes, and it's actually not Hawaii. So, for me, it was learning to let go of my parents' approval. Not that they expected anything, but being in Asian culture, you're taught to just, like if you ever saw the movie Turning Red, in the beginning of the movie, the little girl in the movie, she was like, my parents do everything for me. They love me, they feed me, they clothe me, they put a roof over my head, and all I ever have to do is follow everything they tell me to do. So I felt like I had to do that. And as I was forging my own path, I felt like I was failing as a daughter because I'm not doing the same thing as everybody else. And so I had to learn to let go of that approval so that I can move forward. Because if I didn't let go of that approval, I would still be stuck in that my parents don't love me. They think I'm a black sheep, I'm a failure. And so I had to let that go so that I can move forward. And, I'm not saying my parents were disappointed, they weren't. They might not have understood what I was doing, but they supported it. But I just felt like I needed their approval to succeed.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm sure, and we'll finish with this. I'm sure that a lot of people are listening here and feel the same way, like they feel like they need their parents' approval. What are some things that you did, or like how did you get to the point where you actually felt like, okay, I don't need their approval anymore? What kind of work did you have to do to get to that point?
I think the biggest moment that made me realize I didn't need their approval was the fact that, every year I would go home to the Philippines because I wanted to spend time with my grandmothers. Um, you know, uh, spend as much time as I could because they were getting old. I mentioned to you earlier that my one grandma passed away on Christmas Day last year, and so that has been a huge like 360 for our family, right? Because, she was our rock. Me and my sisters love her dearly. And I think my dad just mentioned that he was just happy that I would go and just go halfway across the world just to spend time with her. And he was just proud that I was able to think that way. And so that made me realize, like, okay, actually, like this is fine. The approval that I've been seeking wasn't that like that's all they wanted. They didn't ask for much. They were just happy that I went over and spent quality time with my grandma, which I would do in a heartbeat anyway. And that made me realize that like I just needed to let go of that approval.
Mm, that's great. That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes, obviously, everybody's relationship with their parents and is different, and some parents are very much like you need to do X, Y, and Z or else like you're cut off or whatnot. But oftentimes I think we just create the narrative of I need, or my parents need me to do this or else they're going to see me as a failure. But sometimes that's make believe in our own head and we're creating that our own story, and sometimes it's completely true and sometimes it's somewhere in between. So anyways, I appreciate you sharing that. That's very powerful. Well, you guys, she has a book coming out on May 6th called Bridging the Confidence Gap. So you should definitely go check that out. We'll have that linked in the show notes where you can pre-order and everything like that. She also has a podcast, as we mentioned before, the Tao of Self-Confidence. You can also follow her on Instagram at sheena.yap.chan. And again, we'll have all that stuff linked up in the show notes. Anything else? Any other good place where people should follow you, or any other way you'd like to finish it?
Yeah, for sure. They can follow me on LinkedIn, Sheena Yap Chan, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, or X. You can check out my website, sheenayapchan.com. I also have a free self-confidence personality quiz that you can take. My current book, The Tao of Self-Confidence, is available for purchase. So it's at Barnes& and Nobles, Amazon, and other book retailers. But if you forget anything that I mentioned, just Google my name, Sheena Yap Chan, because I'm the only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Sheena, it's a blast today. I really appreciate you sharing a little bit about your story, the different ways that you've built confidence over the years, and the different ways that you've helped other people build confidence. I know that it enlightened a lot of people to different things that they can do in their own life to build confidence in themselves. And hopefully people start to take action. And people, you are capable. Have faith in yourself, believe in yourself. Other than that, that's all we got today, Sheena. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Nick. It was a blast.
That was such an inspiring interview with Sheena. The biggest thing I hope you walk away with is that confidence is not something you're born with. It's something that you build, one decision and one mindset shift at a time. If you haven't already, if you're listening on the Apple Podcasts app or on Spotify, make sure you hit the follow button. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button down below so you guys don't miss any of the upcoming interviews and podcasts that we have coming up. Here are 3 of my biggest takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, doing is what builds confidence. She went to Hawaii. That was a huge confidence builder for her. I mean, imagine moving in and of itself is just a pain in the butt. Imagine moving across almost the world, not knowing what you're going to do, not knowing anybody there, not knowing where you're going to live. Like, talk about, and then figuring all that out. Talk about a confidence builder. Then she started a podcast. She started speaking, so on and so forth. And she said that she feels most confident when she is, quote, showing up. So doing is what builds confidence. Number 2, doing what you've always done is the route to low confidence. And that's kind of an extension of the first one, but I just loved her story of moving to Hawaii so much. Like, if you just continue to do what you've always done, live in the same place, stay in the same routines, stay in the same job, hang out with the same people, your confidence levels are not going to grow. You have to do new things in order to build confidence. I know that's something that I want to continually remind myself as I go throughout life. And number 3 is that confidence isn't something that you build and then all of a sudden you have and you're good. It must continue to be worked upon. She said that understanding rejection as part of the process was a huge thing that she wants to continue to work on moving forward and will help her unlock new levels of success. And then she said that recently dropping the need for approval from her parents has been absolutely huge as well. So remember, confidence isn't something that you build and then all of a sudden you have and you're good. It needs to continually be worked on day in and day out, week in and week out, etc. If you can do these things, you'll become more of a confident version of yourself, a healthier version of yourself, and therefore you'll continue to get closer and closer to your best you.